welcome to the Organ House Concert and Seminar Series today. It's a new day indeed, and indeed a special day for so many reasons. One of the reasons is that we are having our engagement today is diving or focusing in another direction. Of course, you know what I'm talking about. We are having one of us today, a long-standing scholar, performer, and also one of our divers in Nigeria. I mean, in classical music and opera music scene. Many of you know our presenter of today, at least in the last 20 years, or let's say, yeah, in the last 20 years, within the Nigerian operatic scene, classical music scene, and the classical music industry. So I am happy to welcome everyone to this important conversation. Yeah, it's a conversation. I use that word, intentionally because Dr. Agatha, our presenter today, she is not coming. How will I put it now? She's known, and because we know her in many ways, so it's going to be a conversation to share insights, experiences, ideas, both from our own archive and things that have happened around us as well, and how these stories, ideas can further enhance our understanding on the one hand, the Nigerian music industry, particularly the opera, and the role of women in this industry. And the second layer is how our expertise can challenge us to start thinking about what we all know in a different way, and how this new thinking can further shape, the landscape, particularly from the female perspective in the Nigerian and African classical music landscape. So on that note, thank you for joining us today. I'm happy to welcome you again. The Organ House Concert and Seminar Series is a space of critical engagement, artistic exploration, scholarly engagement, as well as a space of professional and advancement. By that I mean the conversation. First of all, the Organ House platform is a free and critical space, not a space, not just talking about what is known, established idea. Rather, it's a space that aims to critically engage, rigorously, challenge tradition, beyond what is understood or beyond what we all know. So I'm happy to welcome you. If you are new, for some of us who are new, who are first-timer, first-comer to this platform runs every Wednesday. And we are happy that we have our global communities. Many of them are here already, and many are still going to join. We have a series of programs, we have different initiatives ongoing, and also we are very much present on social media. Our YouTube page have more than 20 recorded series like this. This is also going to be available on our YouTube page, our social media platform, X, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram is always open for you to further engage, or you can send us notes or comment on our works on the, across these spaces. But most importantly, the YouTube page also doubles as a space for curating big ideas like this, like what we are going to have today, curating, works of great people among us and those our colleagues across the world. It's a way of relaunching, the new emerging idea, the new conversation, not just talking about, not just recording, but also making available for the world to learn from the emerging works, contributions of scholars, both from Nigeria and Africa, and how these scholars are contributing to global discourse, and how they are also challenging established norms. I'm sure today, by the time we are done with this conversation today, you will understand what I mean by critically pushing ideas beyond norm, using their works, their experiences, and artistic and creative exploration to push and negotiate new forms of knowledge and, artistic experiences. So on that note, I'm happy to welcome Dr. Agatha Holland. Of course, we all know Dr. Agatha in many guises, in many ways, as mentioned earlier. So I'm not going to do, first of all, Dr. Agatha, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today. How are you today? You are welcome to the Organals series again.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I was so giddy when you sent me a note about this. I'm very, very much happy to be here.
Great. We are equally happy to have you. It's indeed a great honor, privilege, and we are happy to, have you, particularly on a day like this, to open us to a new layers to take us to another level of our communication, of our conversation on this platform. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So just definitely for some of our friends, what we are going to do today, like as mentioned earlier, our conversation is going to take another form, a new direction today. Not so much of new ideas, but advancing of what we used to have or redefining it, particularly for the context of today's conversation. So we're going to, I and Dr. Agatha, we are going to have a kind of dialogue, we are going to go over a few points here and there that speaks to what we want to do today. And I'm going to allow her to take us, into to explore various ideas using different forms. I'm sure definitely by the time both of us are done with this stage, then we'll open the floor. So you can ask questions, you can, corroborate, you can advance, you can challenge. You are welcome. No, I know, I'm sure you know what I mean by challenge. Ask questions. Yes, ask questions. Seek clarifications and how what she has discussed or show us, what you think about it. So that is what we do here. Yeah. So we allow people to talk. We allow you to bring your own ideas, push advanced idea and how things can, shape ideas in different ways, in numerous ways. Yeah. So to start with, I am going to, of course, I'm going to allow Dr. Holland to introduce herself. Let me not do the introduction. I think it's better. Yes, I'm going to allow, I'm going to invite her to, introduce herself. Tell us about yourself. What are you busy with? Your new performance, production. Yeah, please do. So you have the platform, Dr. Holland.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Agatha Ibeazor Holland. I am Nigerian. A lot of people on this like Zoom know me very well. Know me very, very well, like you've said. I was born and raised in Nigeria until about my late teens when I moved to the United States to study. I did my undergrad in the United States, also my master's and my doctorate. But my very foundational music education, as you all know, was from Muson. And before that, I was in a choir. The choir led me to Muson, and Muson led me to the United States. Muson introduced me to opera and led me to the United States, where I'm continuing my career as an opera singer and as a voice instructor. Yeah, I started in Muson. I did the 2-year Muson diploma. And right from my studies in Muson, I've always been interested in women empowerment, as well as opera, but also women empowerment and how really the place of women in the world at large, and also in music, in opera, in Western classical music. And so that led me to do various research on women in singing, women in opera, women in various musical periods in Western musical history. and also women. Now my present research is focused on the place of an African prima donna, an African opera singer in Western music, as well as in Africa. What do we do? How do we manage these responsibilities? I'm very much interested in that. That's my current research. I'm also a current performer, although not as much because I have young children, very young children. And but I keep exploring my research, and I keep performing where I can. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you so much for that, insightful, concise, and very, very detailed response. Yes, definitely, we are definitely going to explore your concepts or conception of Africa Prima Donna.
Yeah.
Is an interesting, theme, catchy, and there's a lot about it. I'm sure there's a lot we need to unpack on that idea, because yeah. I know you've been traveling, working with that label for years. Yeah, and I'm happy that yes, it's now becoming a type of brand. Conceptual, yeah, brand, yeah. Of course, it's a great thing. Definitely, we are going to get to that shortly. But let's start from somewhere. You explain your music, particularly early training, Muson, church. So the question is, what really motivated your entry, into music?
Whenever anybody asks me this question, I always say music was not supposed to be in the cards for me, really. Being an opera singer wasn't something that I have always longed to be. As far as my childhood goes, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. And you know how African parents, you have only two professions. You either be a lawyer or you be a doctor, or if you're a male, you be an engineer. That's really those were really the professions in the cards for me. I wasn't supposed to be a singer, really, and so I was just a chorister at my church. I'm Catholic, so music is really important, was really important in my church. And so I was just a singer. I wasn't even really, I didn't consider myself that good. I was just, singing in the background, like a regular soprano. I didn't get any solos or whatever. I was just a good old singer. And until I finished secondary school. This was in Nigeria. So I finished secondary school in Nigeria, and I was waiting to get admitted to study law in Anambra State University. However, whenever I got admitted to do this, to study in Nigeria, I have three older siblings. They also got admitted at the same time. So it was a lot of financial responsibility on my mom. My dad is late, by the way. So it was a lot of financial responsibility on my mom. So I had to step down, being the youngest. I had to step down and wait for my older siblings to go to school before I thought about going to school. And during my wait, I was in the choir, and the choir master told me about Muson. It was like, as you're waiting, you might as well get some kind of education. I was like, what do you mean education? It was like, there's this Muson program you can attend and be part of it. I was like, okay, what do I need to do to get admitted? And he said, well, you have to know theory. I was like, I don't know theory. I don't know any theory at all. And I couldn't read music then. So he said, well, you have to learn. And for a whole year, I devoted a whole year to studying music theory in order to pass the Muson grade 5. And also learn how to read music. And so that was what I did for a whole year. He guided me, and as well as other people in my choir then, they taught me music theory and reading music and really rudiments of music, things I needed to know in order to be fit to attend Muson. And here we are. After all those years, I studied for a whole year. I did the entrance exam at Muson. I got admitted to Muson, and music has just been the trajectories ever since. So
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Of course, thanks for that wonderful, narrative, or can say details regarding your early entries, particularly early training, or what your motivation to music. Now, then how will you then describe this in relation to your Muson education early career trajectory in Nigeria? Because was everything about Muson, or do you have experiences performing even before perhaps Muson, or while at Muson, or after Muson within Nigerian context? How can you describe or explain that to us?
Yes. So before Muson, as I said, I was just singing in church. I was just a chorister at church. I wasn't doing any big performances, not singing any solo, even at church. I wasn't singing any solo. I wasn't really a known singer. Like, I just knew how to sing in tune, and that's about the extent of my performing. But however, when I started Muson, I realized that there was like a whole new life of like music and performing, and this kind of music, which is opera and classical music. There's a whole new world, and there's a whole new audience that this can be geared to. And so while I was at Muson, I had opportunities to perform with the Muson choir, with the Muson orchestra. And while I was studying in Muson, it was all about Muson. It was my performance was just only in Muson. However, graduating from Muson, I moved to the capital, Abuja, and then I started performing or giving concerts and teaching the capital's diplomatic community. So I was singing for experts and diplomats in Abuja. I was also singing in church. I was also teaching. I was teaching I was giving voice lessons. While also in Abuja, I got opportunities to travel out of the country to more African countries. Like I traveled to Ghana, and I was briefly in South Africa just to performing also in classical music, of course. But that's the extent of my performance really in Nigeria. Right before I left for the United States, I did study a little bit. I did a summer program, kind of like a year. It's an extended summer program. I spent a year in Norway studying also, but that's about it. It was until I came to America that things changed and the more doors opened.
I'm going to interrupt you a bit there. Thank you so much. Okay, thanks so much for at least I'm happy that. So from Muson, it was about, of course, if you go to for some of us who experience Muson, there's a lot of performing activities, a lot, which as a performer, as a student, they are more than enough to keep you going, to get you busy, and those were the experiences also that eventually becoming transformative point for most of the students, moving from Muson into the society, into the broader economy. And yeah. But the question, yes, exactly. So then, how will you then describe, so for the point where you want to transit to, so then how will you relate your your early career motion or, experiences, trajectory to your studies in the state and professional experiences, is there, can you draw a connection? Can you compare? Is there anything, how will you describe that? Or what does that mean for you?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the big idea, or the big difference with me. It's cultural shock and personal identity. I'm African and I'm very, very much Nigerian. Before I moved to the United States, Nigeria and Nigerian culture and everything immersed in Nigeria was all I knew. So going to the United States as a Nigerian, singing the music that belongs to to where I am in, kind of like brought up a bit of confusion as to who I am personally, and like what do I actually stand for, like personal identity. It kind of confused me a little bit there, because for the most part, when Africans go to the United States, or to the West, let me just say the West, to study music, most of the time they are really owning in their crafts to further enhance African music, or to further enhance African art music, something like that. But I was on a different trajectory. I was studying opera. I was there to study classical singing, having not been in this this environment at all my life, having not knowing anything about the genre and the culture that I am about to immerse myself in. So it was very confusing. It was difficult. The first 2 years was difficult. I missed home a lot. I wondered what I was doing. I wondered if there was any goal into doing what I was doing, like singing opera. Who am I going to sing it to? After I finished studying, for instance, who am I going to sing it to? Would I go back to Nigeria and sing opera? To who? Who is going to listen? How will this put money in my pocket? Like, how can this be a tangible career as opposed to being a lawyer? So this was these were the problems I encountered. So that's the big one. Yeah.
I think this is quite, let's unpack this a bit.
Okay.
Quite, yeah, it's multi-layered, in many instances, because one, is now becoming a generic, if that's a correct word, a generic experience for most people particularly from Nigeria or Africa, particularly from the colonial protectorate angles of Africa, compared to those settled colonialism, Southern Africa, where they have experience with whites. I mean, yeah. Those in West Africa who experience colonialism in the sense of protectorate, Yeah. So for many of us, we tend to discover, for instance, that we are Black when we get to a space that gives us that kind of asymmetric or binary understanding of who we are. You get into America, oh, so there's white. Oh, there's something called this. So a lot of, angles, a lot of thinking, a lot of things started opening up, started thinking a different way. Oh, I am this, oh, I am Black. Oh, I am Africa. So there's a lot of identity issue, imagine, questions. Oh, I am Africa. Oh, there's slave trade. Oh, then we start thinking about in hierarchy. Oh, this is white. These are, oh, this is Black. And this Black also is also ambiguous. There are layers of Black, African-American, slave, whatever, then Black migrant, second generation migrant. Then we start thinking in different layers, That's one. Then the other one is the fact that the idea of opera, classical music, compared to where you are also going. So there's a lot going on there, of course. But in one word, what is opera? From your training in Nigeria to America.
For my training in Nigeria, what is opera, or just generally what is opera?
Generally, from your multi-layered experience, how can you, so in a layman word, or in your own, on your own word, in your own word.
Okay, in my own words, opera is drama set to music. That's it. Drama set to music, dialogue in music.
How does that differ to things that happen in church? When you were growing up in Catholic church, when they say children come and act, and you are asked to sing, you sing this one before you do this one. How does that differ?
Oh, yes. Okay, so now opera is drama set to music performed on stage for an audience, right?
Okay.
In Africa, music is just music. Music is a way of life. Music is what we do. When you're working, you sing. When you're going to the market, you sing. It is, or at least, the concept of music is a way of life. The introduction of Christianity and colonialism made stage and audience. But in Africa, like for instance, when they say children come and sing, it is just what you do in church. It is not like I am performing to get a round of applause. I mean, they clap for you when you sing as kids, but it's a different different things at stake. Opera, when you perform opera, you are interpreting somebody's work, and you better do it right. You better be an expert. You as a person on stage, you're an expert in interpreting somebody's work. As a kid in Africa, you're not interpreting anybody's work. You're just expressing yourself.
Okay, one more layer to that before we move. Definitely. So, as a kid in Africa, or let me use your word, we make music in Africa. Maybe let me a bit. You do it. You are creative on the spot. Now, the fact that this music we make in Africa are just for making fun, they also have their inherent embedded philosophy, embedded theories, embedded institutionalized ways of doing things, that we Africans, we take for granted.
Yes.
When we get to school about complex rhythm, then we've forgotten that even your 2 years old, at 2 years, grab your spoon and demonstrate layers of complex rhythms without even thinking about it. But when we get to school, they call our attention to a different way of thinking about complex rhythm. The same way for operatic singing. And of course, we are still going to talk more about the technical component of your work. But what I'm driving at is simply that why do we need to wait to university to start conceptualizing, or why do we need to understand opera in that way, that we need to travel to America, we need to go to Italy, we need to go to the best conservatoire in South Africa for us to understand our opera, for your definition, music set to whatever? Why can't we think of, let me give you an example. For instance, I'm sure in Western Nigeria, the Alarinjos, traveling theater, the Ogunmola, this popular one, they are there. And of course, they are there. They've done a lot of work. In fact, they perform on the streets, or market square, and people form a kind of cycle. People dance, masquerade dance, people dance, and people enjoy, people clap, people enjoy, and they pass the message. In the same way that I would sit at Royal Albert or at Royal Albert Hall or La Scala, in Italy, to enjoy works of Verdi or Puccini and co. The question is, from your own study, what does this ignite? What does it mean for you to think of, okay, if it's in Royal Harvard and it's written on paper, it is opera. But the ones we do in our village in Umuahia or in Enugu, that people sit and you bring the culture, you bring kola nuts, people go to the, people dance, people clap, hey, 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 hey. Another person go to the stage and they dance, they give signals and everything. Why are those ones not opera? Let me throw that to you. I think you are muted, please. Can you unmute yourself?
I think
Okay.
I was saying that it's just a matter of, can you hear me?
Yes, definitely. Thank you. I can hear you.
Okay. It's a matter of the name. It's a matter of numerology, like what you name it. In the West, it's called opera. In Africa, it's called our traditional music. It's just called there's Atilogo. Like from where I'm from Anambra State. It's called Atilogo. It's what's called. I guess if opera is the same way, if the culture of Atilogo was in the West, maybe it will be called opera. Maybe it will be called something else. It's just the difference to me is just what it is called, right? Now, you mentioned something. Why do we have to go to the West? Why do we have to go to America to then study this? Well, I personally, I didn't go to America to study my native dances and music. I went to study actually music from that part of the world, and so I felt like, where else would you get the best training if not where the music is originating from? Now, there are scholars, there are American scholars, and there are scholars from the West that come to Nigeria to study indigenous music, to do some ethnomusicological research about Nigerian music. So I guess I can equate both as the same. Like, I went to America to study music from that part of the world, just as an American will come to Nigeria and do the same.
Wow. Okay. We are now opening another kind of worm now, which is quite interesting for this contest. So I like the way you compare. You bring what we in the science we call asymmetric power relation and issues that has been around for years in music studies, both in performance. In fact, recently it has now become one of the core component of musicological study, or be it performance, be it theory, composition issues. We all know this particular issue, is the elephant in the room anywhere in the world right now, decoloniality.
Yes.
Africanization, westernization, coloniality. It has different name, but within the context of what you just explained right now, I want to throw it back to you again. Perhaps you could provide more, context to it, or flesh it out a bit more. So when you say, let's say this way, when a scholar, white skin, from somewhere in Europe or US, after doing the first 2 years and they do the qualifying exam, they are meant to travel to wherever, particularly in ethnomusicology or or musicological studies. They are meant to travel down to the so-called third world field. They call them field. They're meant to travel there to go and live with the native, to learn the native way. And after a few years or 1 year, mostly the typical ethnography in that sense is 18 months. And as time, over the years, it has reduced. In fact, some just do one summer now, one summer or 2 summers combined together is not up to 6 months, I think. And they write their thesis, they defend and become doctor. And that doctor, confer on them authority. If that person went to Umuahia, for instance, or went to Abia or Anambra to study Atilogo, so they are going to be seen as, the expert of Atilogo. So whenever there's a global discourse on Atilogo culture or music, they are going to call those people. Instead of calling you that you are from Anambra or from that place, they are going to see you as a native, you know, but they're going to call that person the expert of Atilogu, somebody who has spent 2 summers, you know, in your village to, to just to visit, okay, what are you getting? And this person has written a book, you know, either whatever, that's another context, you know. But the context here, this, after this person written this book on Atilogu, then it has conferred on them the experts, the voice of Atilogu. That's on the one hand. On the second hand, you, given the expertise, professionalism, the training, you've gone to US, Italy, or whatever, Europe, to study opera or classical music. Do you think after studying, even after first year, 4 years, the rigorous work, the second degree, master's, 2 years, the rigorous work, and another one, 3 to 4 years, everything for PhD together for master's could be up to 7 years. And the first one could be 4 or 5 years, depending on the area you studied, you know, the region. Everything put together is going up to, like, let's say 12 years at a stretch. And that compared to somebody who has just spent 2 summers, you know, then do you think you will be conferred on the same agency, the same power that as an expert of opera music, or if you have an expert of Puccini or Bach, or you know, when we say the work of classical or Baroque era madrigals. So when you go to Europe, can you be called an expert to come and discuss madrigal? Can you be called an expert to come and talk about Puccini's opera? Can you be invited, you know, or even in Italy or within European American context, can you be seen as an expert of Verdi, you know, for instance? So I'm putting these two together now because it's an interesting case you have opened to us, and it's important for us to discuss this reality while we are all here today. And I'm happy to have you, you know, to shed more light, to flesh this out today. What do you think?
So I think that, you know, it was what you described was very bad in the past. It's very bad. Like if I went to the United States or to Europe, to Italy, for instance, if I go to Italy and devote 1 summer into studying Puccini, I don't think I would be inferred as the Puccini expert personally. And I think it has a lot to do with the color of my skin. When somebody sees me as an African, they don't think that I would be an expert in Puccini, really, because there are lots of like Italians that are experts, that are from where Puccini is from, that are expert, that have written and studied and lived the life of Puccini, and I wouldn't be. And I think this has to do a lot with documentation. And it's unfortunate that we have less documentation, actually written documentation. We have oral documentation, we have experience documentation, but we don't have written documentation. So when somebody comes from America and writes about Atilogu, the person is seen as an expert because the person has actually documented something. But when I go there, I'm not able to start, I'm not giving the credibility that I should be rightfully given, because there's so many things written about Puccini already by different experts, by different experts in the field in Italy, people that are close friends with Puccini that have passed down this written documentation. So I think documentation matters with who is inferred to as an expert or not in the past. But right now, things are really changing. I can be a Puccini expert in my own right if I did study Puccini. Personally, my research is really bel canto singing, and in the past, throughout the years, I have written a lot about bel canto singing, and I've written a lot about techniques of bel canto singing. So now things are changing. People are really opening their eyes to like seeing who experts can be and what an expert can do regardless of their skin color. Now Nigerians are studying, are going to America or going to the West and introducing Atilogu music. A very prominent person that I know that is really a good figurehead for this is Dr. Ruth Opara. Her whole research is writing is about I think she's from Imo State, so Imo State women's music. She has really done a lot in this regard. So things are changing slowly but surely. I wonder if this answers your question.
Oh, well, I think yes, partly, but let me
partly.
Partly, yeah. Thank you. Of course, thanks so much for the one explanation. So the point is, of course, I know after you've studied bel canto, yeah, and I'm happy you mentioned Dr. Ruth Okpara is a good colleague, brilliant scholars, of course. I know her very well. Yeah. So then the point for me is, and mentioning Dr. Ruth Okpara is another layer to what we are trying.
Yeah.
Another layer to it, because it brings us, is actually situates this conversation where it belongs, where I will get to that shortly. So the point is, there's difference between what makes you an expert, what confers an expert on you. It's not just about the certificate. I'm sure you know about it. It's also it's something more deeper, the qualities of identity, which also speaks to issues of economy, your positioning within the global sphere of that practice. For instance, if you are one of the experts of bel canto singing, you have studied in Italy or Germany, or the headquarters of this kind of culture, this particular ways of doing opera, of music or classical music singing, do you think you get the exact privilege that my friend who will come from the US or UK to do 2 summer with Atilogu, there's no way of even, let's not drag it too much. The reality is that there's an economic privilege that is attached to these institutionalized ways of doing things. And I think you answered it already, because of the law of the scheme. Yeah.
Yes.
Where we started from in the other place, I mentioned the idea of decoloniality. What that means across space is quite, open to different understanding. So the point is, now let's not drag. We'll come back to this definitely, but let's proceed quickly. And of course, we're already in that area, that particular session where you have taken us into where my next point, which is your own research now. Yes, you studied bel canto. Yeah, of course. Even before bel canto, we already know you as a prima donna, different stuff. Yeah, it's there everywhere. We know, oh, yeah, of course. But the question is, in your, you did an interesting research, or, your entry into research and scholarship. So the point is, can you tell us about your research, including your motivation for choosing the type of research and ideas and argument and focus, that you have explored in your work? Can you just tell us about that? Perhaps that can actually help us from this initial point of what we call authorial voice, your authority, if you have, and that can help us, these ideas of being expert or no expert, privileged owners of privilege.
Absolutely. So I've always, like I said, I've always championed, somehow, knowingly or unknowingly, always been on the side of women and women empowerment. Even as an undergrad in my studies, I never knew like where my singing or this opera life is going to take me. I've always been interested in where is the woman's place in anything I was doing. So As an undergrad, I was interested in castrati singing.
Okay. Is that technology? Or I think
There we go.
back. Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, I got a call. So as an undergrad, I have always been interested in, like this 17th century castrati singing. And I just loved the way they sounded. However, I kept asking the question, why were women not allowed to sing in churches in the 17th century? So where is the woman's place? A woman was castigated as being unclean and unfit. A woman is, again, pushed aside as being not good enough to sing, even like high voices, that they had to mutilate men in order for them to sound like women. That is like an extreme, an extreme situation. But women were not given the chance to even sing in church. Where is the woman's place? I was always asking. That was my like entry into research. As a master's student, again, women empowerment. I even wrote about our Nigerian author Chimamanda, how she was championing feminism and how that comes into music. As at that point, I was writing about pop music though. And so I related her performance with Beyonce to where women were in music. Now, as a doctoral student, I was also interested in women in African culture, the African prima donna, like we're talking right now, the African prima donna, the African woman. What is she doing? How, is she going to be able to sing? Is she going to be able to live this glamorous life of opera while being the ideal African woman? The ideal African woman to an African is, a mother, somebody who's nurturing, somebody who is at home, not somebody who's traveling the world and singing. That singing should be done at home. Where is this woman's place in opera or in Western classical music in this regard? I'm also interested in communicating our own African culture, since African women are not as free to travel and do all this glamorous things that opera singers, their counterparts, opera singers in the West can do. How do we then teach the world our own music as a way of introducing our own African culture to this opera singing or to opera as a genre of music? So those are my various research. And if you see, you would notice that there is a connection about everything has to do about women's place in whatever studies or whatever level of my research I am at the moment. I'm always asking the question about where is a woman's place.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, thanks for that, interesting, outline about your research. Now, let's take it one by one. The first one, let's start from the top, your last research on Nigerian art music, why, okay, of course, you want to represent. Now, there's a particular trajectory, or I can say established ways of doing things, not necessarily an institutionalized one, but established ways. That is, when people work in Nigeria and they study in Nigeria, they work on Western, they are known for Western performance, piano playing. flute or piano player or organ or composition. And when they get to the UK, US, South Africa, or whatever, they do the same to a larger extent than undergrad. From their master's levels, they start transitioning, finding their space. Okay, I think this one is not this. Oh, this is this. And you see, transition starts gradually. And by the time they get to their PhD level, suddenly you see the shift. Oh, African art music, indigenous, whatever, African popular music. Is that the case for you?
Well, it's not really the case for me. I stayed singing opera throughout. Although I presented some so I did a like kind of like a chamber music recital during my last year as a doctoral student, and I sang some African art music song, but it has never really been I never really made the switch to singing like art music. I would like to introduce it and like look into it, but I don't consider myself an expert or somebody who is like really devoting my time or my resource or energy, right, really, to African art music. I like African art. I want African art music as a teacher, as a voice teacher. I would like African art music to be taught to my students as, to diversify their repertoire ranges. But I'm not really changing my my central studies, if that makes sense. Yeah, I've always sung opera. I've always sung bel canto. Even I've always had a thing for like the bel canto composers and bel canto singing, really.
Okay. Yes, it does. It makes sense. But let me put it in a different way.
Okay.
Which aligns with the initial discussion around root opera, studying women.
Yes.
People going back to their community. Now this your idea of doing bel canto, but in African art music. Is this part of how will I put it? There's a movement. Is it that part of that institutionalized or imagined movement of us representing our culture or portraying our culture instead of doing the white thing in quote? Okay, I have the power now. I want to do my own thing. I want to represent my hood. I want to represent my culture.
Yes,
is that
the hood. Absolutely. So there is
it part of?
Yes, there's this natural tendency that I have, or that most people would have, to like, bring music from where they're from, or like introduce to their students, like I'm doing, or to their audiences, like, hey, this is the kind of music I sing in Nigeria, or this is the Nigerian language, and it is set to classical music, but I'm singing in Igbo, for instance, like I'm singing in Yoruba. Yes, it is like, it's a very natural human way of like expressing one's identity and one's inner self. Like, hey, I remember when I was young, we sang this song and I'm singing it to you. Actually, in my last recital, I did perform one song from Nigeria, like it's an Igbo song, and I sang it, and the audience really like connected to it because of my program notes. I wrote a lot about that in my program notes. Yeah, so it's just a natural tendency of like humans to want to show your roots, your origins. And I think you only, like you mentioned, you only do this when you have been established in a particular institution or in a particular culture, when you are like you're settled, really, you've settled down, like, okay, this is who I am. I am an African singer, I am an African opera singer, or I'm an African researcher, or I'm an African whatever field of study you are doing, really. It's just a natural human tendency to do so.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you so much. Now, 2 points from your point, your interesting explanation. The first one is that, okay, so of course, representing your culture is part of that huge narrative of representing Africa, in the global space. Then by extension, the other one is, okay, I have the expertise now. I want to also use my expertise, my own professionalism to resituate or refocus, African art and anything Africa in the global space. Then, then the third one perhaps is, okay, in quote, I can't sing like a white person. Let me go back to my environment and do African art music and become the voice, become the expert. You can, and become the expert. So I can also become, if I can compete in the mainstream market or Fushini, at least when I sing Akinyoba, when I sing Samujuku, when I sing this, people will also listen to me, So these things operate, of course, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But the question then is, don't you think, now, this is from my own, let's come back to Nigerian context now, from this particular area. Let's take it back into the Nigerian context. Many people do this also in Nigeria, particularly in Nigerian music scholarship. People go to undergrad, they do Western music, and it's still there today, almost all you do, counterpoint, whatever, acoustic, do a lot of stuff, modal counterpoint, all those big names, you know them, of course. Then to the master's level, they also do the same, but suddenly you see the shift at their PhD level. They want to explore the drum line in Agidigbo or in Atilogo's music. Question to you is that, why are people, what do you think? Why couldn't, is it that people cannot start their music training from that Atilogo from day one? Of course, we understand multicultural curriculum, doing Western and merging Western with African, but that expertise that they want to become towards the end of the doing the back and also doing the Atilogo. They're also doing the Atilogo in their second degree, and by the time they get to the PhD level, don't you think they will have become okay? They can now an expert of Atilogo. The question is, why is the shift at the level? Why couldn't they start from that same focus from day one?
Well, I think it's because of the way it is like degrees and like educational system is structured, really. At your PhD level, you are able to focus on one thing. You are supposed to, and you're required to focus on, to like have a thesis, like a dissertation that is very, very streamlined, as opposed to like, at the undergrad and the master's, somewhat on the master's level, where you are exploring, really spreading your wings and like seeing what you're good at. That's how educational institutions are like structured, like you learn everything at the undergrad, especially as a freshman or as a first year student, you learn everything. You're supposed to like, be in all the classes. And then your second year, your sophomore year, you're beginning to like streamline. So it's really like a pyramid, really. Like it goes from like big from the bottom and then really, really steep at the top, because you're able to focus. And I think the reason why people then go back to their roots is because they're really good at their roots, and like you can't you can't really take away the Nigerianness or the Africanness from an African. They're really it's their roots, where they're from. They're really good at it, and that's what they're going to do best. And I think that's
why couldn't they,
yes.
Sorry, can I interrupt you?
Yes.
Why couldn't they start from that and fine-tune that route, like we have in China, in the Asia? When you study, well, of course, you have seen many Asian cultural products in terms of studies and scholarship. Those kids, they play piano, of course, but when you go to the other side of the sphere, you see them developing their own indigenous forms of musicking. It could be in orchestral, instrumental, even singing and compositional ways alongside. And by the time they are already at the PhD level or advanced level, then they are, they have the choice or focus on the Western, the globalized idea of, music. But the question is mine to you is that, what do we need to wait for that, my own thing at PhD level? Why not from the one to nurture it through curriculum, through forms of whatever, multicultural education?
Yes, I think this is where we have to change the way we view education and the way we study. Because in China, for instance, they probably have a different organization of like their education. Like, I'm not saying that the person who then studies Atilogo or who focuses on Atilogo in the PhD level never did any Atilogo as an undergrad. He probably did, or she probably did, but didn't do it as much. Was like still learning the everything. Was still very, very rudimental, in like studying everything. And maybe we need to change. We then need to come back to the drawing board and then change the way we look at education. Why be a master of what is a jack of all trade? Why be a jack of all trade and master of none in the during undergraduate level? Why not be a master of one in undergraduate level so that you can then build? I think that's a very, very good point. And I think it has to do with the way we study. It's just the way, even in the West, even in the West, if you want to be a composer, you want to compose film music, for instance, you don't start composing film music, only composing film music as an undergrad. You compose opera, you compose everything, you do counterpoint. I remember when I was made to do counterpoint.
Yeah.
Compose counterpoint. You do arranging, you arrange Frank Sinatra, you arrange Bach, you do all this stuff, you do everything. And so then when you get to the top, then you can then streamline. And then a Western person will say, I want to do film music. I want to do only Disney music. Oh, I want to do only 40s film music, something like that. Yeah, I think it's just the way we study. Yeah, sorry.
Definitely, I agree with you. Of course, the argument, even in fact, the position is not even about a stereotypical way of doing things in one way. The idea is, okay, yes, the diversity in everything we do, and that should be key point. The idea is not to rule out a particular ways of doing things or a type of music. The idea is, okay, what about the balancing? I think that's the point here. How do we balance everything and also lay emphasis in everything on things that we see as our own roots? That's one point.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Definitely we'll come back to that. And think, of course, when we open for conversation, I am very sure we have scholars, we have colleagues who will definitely follow up on this particular point. But before the next one, we are getting closer to the end of this particular conversation. And very soon we are going to open to our colleagues, friends, I'm sure they have questions for you. But before that, just a quick one. Yeah, just a quick one. For some of us who are joining this platform for the first time, you are welcome to the Organ House Concert and Seminar Series at Mountaintop University at Prayer City here within Lagos and Ogun State. I'm sure you know Prayer City. So this is the Organ House, the music department at Mount Yeah, sorry, I was kicked out of the system. Yeah, of course, we are all in this together. It's technology. Yeah, 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 we are all in this together. It happens everywhere. So then the point is, this is Organ House Concert and Seminar Series. This is a space for engagement. When I mean engagement, critical engagement. We tend to engage like this to advance tradition, to question principles, to advance knowledge, to create new space for emerging ideas. We encourage new forms of being, new forms of knowledge, new forms of creativity, which in fact, we challenge institutionalized tradition. Yeah, this is where we tend to, it's an alternative space to say, where we bring ideas on board and we engage them both creatively, artistically, and also scholarly. And what we are having today is just one of those moments of engagement, and we are happy to have our sister, colleague, friends, the African prima donna as ourselves, Yeah, so you are welcome if it's your first time. So please check this program, like what we are having today, would definitely be online in the next few days. We've had series of this program in the last 1 year. Yes, of a larger project of the organ house documentation and diggers is that all these conversations we are having, they will function as academic and educational resource for Nigeria, for university. So you are free, you are welcome to check in the chat. I'm just putting the link to the video, some of the videos we have recorded in the last 1 year. We have up to 27 videos around. Please, you can follow us on those on our YouTube page. You can make use of any of the videos for your research. That is the purpose, is to document, curate this kind of critical perspective and also make it available to the world. One, to create resources, new forms of resource for education in Nigeria, Africa, and also to open up our scholars, like Dr. Agatha said earlier, to represent, the new emerging scholarship, ideas from this part of the world. Nigeria is not just big giant of Africa for nothing. We also want to bring us back to that idea of the kind of emerging idea, the kind of creativity to the global discourse. So please follow us on the YouTube page. Also join us on our social media page like the X, Twitter, and also on Facebook and Instagram pages. Please kindly join us and follow what we are doing. Engage the material. If you have any question, you are welcome to contact us on the social media pages, or or even you can drop a comment for us also on the YouTube links. But check it, follow us, and let's build this initiative together. Thank you so much. Okay, back to the conversation now. Thank you so much, Dr. Holland, for that beautiful explanation and outline. So the next point, taking us to the end of this conversation, the question then is, what is the classical music or opera industry like in Nigeria, particularly in the last 20 years? What do you think? What can you say about that? Particularly from your, you've emerged. Yeah. Okay, please go on. What do you think is like? How do you understand?
It has really bloomed. Like, we have a lot of practitioners of classical music in Nigeria now. So many performers, so many instrumentalists, so many singers, so many groups that are practicing classical music. And some of these groups are really, really good, even comparable to what you can actually find in the West. Despite the lack of resources, despite the lack of proper instruments, proper concert halls, proper sound systems and all that stuff, you still have comparable productions in the between Nigeria and the West. Really, I think it's just going to keep growing. We now have really a market for classical music. people want to play classical music in their weddings. People want to have classic. I remember when I lived in Abuja, people just want to have classical music in their homes to entertain their guests. I would sing for like, like these like political class, and like just sing for their guests on a Friday night, just like that. Wasn't an event or anything. This is something that I know in the history of Western music, this was what you had. People, like composers were writing music and having performers perform in the house of like dukes and archdukes and prominent figures in the West. And you have that in Nigeria, you have that in Abuja. So people really, really into the movement, and people want. One thing I like about Nigerians or African is that they really, really want to learn. They really want to do it right. They want to be good practitioners of like this. They want to be equal to where this music is from. They don't just want to do it like as a secondary thing. And it's going on well. I think that's the state. The state is really, really good. Although you still have some like drawbacks, some like almost there, some really, really not as up to par amateurs around, but compare the numbers, the really good ones are better, are dominating the scene, really.
Wow, thank you so much. Then one point to that is, do you think classical music, because the way you explain it now beautifully, is that it seems to me that classical music is for the privileged in society, or just for the elite, the aristocrat? Is that the case?
It has always, unfortunately, it has just always been that way. It's always been that way. Stage music, for instance, opera in the in 1600 or like early 1700 was really like you would have the music was written for the elitist, and so much unfortunate people are privileged to be there to watch this music or to listen to this music. It has always been music for, it has always been privileged music. Although from opera or from classical music came this music that is easily accessible, like, free for all kind of music. And of course, like church music or religious music that also came from this style per se, became music free for all too. But the essentially like classical music has just always been targeted to the upper class, high up 1%. I call them like the 1% of society. Targeted to. Now that doesn't mean that the other 99% don't listen to it or won't enjoy it, but it's just really targeted to that class of people.
Okay, and you think there's, okay, fine. I'm happy you reference the 16th century, the 17th century aristocrat, and also the elitist nature of the heart, particularly from the Western perspective. In the African context, particularly in Nigeria, do you think particularly the ways in which artists and the new movement in society, right, the new emerging organics, do you think there's a connection or there's a way this art could speak to look, or how has this addressed local contexts beyond the elitist pleasure, elitist ideas of pleasure or entertainment, going into the the grassroots, addressing issues, social issues, addressing economic or political need or sociological or ideological need of the people? Is there any way art or opera or classical music in Nigeria can help address or contribute to that layers of the society?
This is a very multi-layered question, because we have to then go back to like just because of the nature of the discipline and the expense it is to do it takes to do classical music. It is hard for it to address the real issues that like the underlying very palpable issues that one can have in a society like Nigeria. Like, for instance, hunger, right? Like, it is somebody who is full that can then pay for violin lessons to be able to address societal issues. It is somebody who has eaten bread and has eaten jollof rice to his full that can say, oh, I want to go to Muson and do and get piano lessons so that I can then perform this to address political issues. So, like, it's just not, unfortunately, it's just not as accessible as it can be in order to address the real core issues. It can address some issues, don't get me wrong. It can address some issues, but not issues like hunger, or not issues like poverty, you know. It just isn't as cheap to do that, in my in my opinion. And it's quite unfortunate.
Okay.
Now,
I think, yes. Okay, carry on. I can hear you. Please continue.
okay, now I can sing my my African music, like my real Igbo music. I can sing it to bed, or I can sing it before I go to sleep, and just like sing about the world and do that. And then maybe I can gather an audience and sing about how the world is bad. Easy. No problem. Almost spending nothing. But can I do this with opera, like with real opera, where you have all these performers that have to be there in order to perform real opera, all this expense that you have to make to perform real opera? I don't think I can ideally like do that. Sorry, go on.
No problem. Thank you so much. Well, I just want to draw your attention to a particular aspect of your response, which I think, of course, we're going to open it up to our colleagues and friends online as soon as possible. So the point is, let's go to the classical music. Let's leave the of course, we are sitting within the opera context, but let's bring it down a bit to the contemporary classical music landscape in Nigeria, particularly in the last 10, 15 years. We've had beautiful, compositions, and we have composers including those who studied and those who did not study in school. Of course, some of them have been writing, in fact, inspired in most cases by other forms of classical music, both in Nigeria. I'm talking about art music, Nigerian art music, and also popular music also. And also in their work, we've seen series of response, the ways in which they respond. They are responding to Nigeria's social and economic development. I'm going to give you one instance. There's a particular composition that has been flying around in the last few years by Ayorinde. I'm sure you know. I don't know, but perhaps somebody can help me. Is this Samujuku or that's another one? There's another one again that is flying around also. By Shimuwaje. So we have layers of new ideas engaging, trying to talk about both in the spiritual context, church, and also addressing public social issues. Like that particular song that I mentioned is by Dr. Oluranti, who I think it was performed by one of my brothers from CAC, Iyaba. But specifically, the piece was addressing societies, like issues of politics, that the privilege and the forms of conspicuous consumptions that our politicians have engaged, how it has drenched or it mutates chances of common man. That's a political statement, but through classical music. And I can tell you, whenever that music is performed, people get the story, they get the message. And even they also depend on whoever is performing it. The message is passed. It has a purpose. It's very political and very, 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 astute in terms of the ways in which it is directed, at that issue of conspicuous or politicians, corruption, like that. We have a lot of this, of course, but also, again, I agree with you that opera product, perhaps we are growing to that level. And also, there are emerging forms of opera. Perhaps, I don't know if this is a good time to discuss that. We have seen the musical, Saro, all those stuff. Yeah. I'm not sure if these ones are taking the place of opera or they are another layers definition of opera. Most of these new productions are also addressing political issues. Arrest the Music by Fela, based on the life and works of Fela, and the series of compositions like that, or musicals in the recent years that are not just addressing, but are also situated within the ongoing dynamics of Nigeria. So what do you think about this? This is what I meant earlier when I was asking you about the place of this opera and classical music within the contemporary Nigeria issue for common man.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said in the beginning, that our way of life, our way of existence includes music. So if we are addressing issues with music, it is very, very in par, definitely, with our culture. So there's no separation of music, and there's really no separation between music and life experience in original African cultures. But however, this can be even more multi-layered, in the sense that when you introduce opera to then address maybe Africanized then opera to then address these societal issues or problems that we have in Nigeria or anywhere in Africa, then it will even spark more interest, just for the nature of what opera is, with the acting and the singing and the costumes, it will definitely spark more interest. So yes, there is a place for classical music, opera, in addressing or talking about societal issues in that way. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Definitely. Let's move to the next thing. Okay, definitely. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's move to the next two questions, and we open the door for our friends and colleagues online. So then,
yes.
What is the future of classical music practices, field, and economy, particularly in Nigeria and Africa? What is the future?
Well, like I said, the future looks very, very bright from where I'm sitting. There is definitely a lot more emerging artists that are interested in singing this art form. They're not just, doing it as passing by or whatever. They're actually interested. They're investing their time. They're investing their resources to learning, to educating themselves, to getting voice lessons, to getting instrumental lessons for the instrumentalists. They're doing this to really enhance the number of practitioners we have in Nigeria, coming from Nigeria also, because most of the Africans that are singing classical music don't necessarily live in Africa, just like me. Those that are singing it on the international stage, they don't necessarily live in Africa, except the South Africans. The South African singers do live in South Africa, and you did mention how colonization in South Africa is kind of different from the type you see in other parts of Africa. So yes, we are having increasing numbers of students leaving Muson, going to the West to study instruments, to study singing, to it's just every day it's getting bigger and bigger. So that is the future. That is the future. And as we can see, as you can see also, you can see that there is a bright future for Nigerians in the classical music space.
Thank you so much. Now, the last two questions. Last question is 2 in 1, and it's personally for you. As a woman, what are the challenges you have faced, particularly as an opera singer, as a woman in the industry? Can you give us one instance, one instance of, challenges, things that, at this particular point, this is how I address them. Can you give us one instance of that?
Yes, I have one recently. Actually, it was when I had my son, my first son, my second child. So I was before I got pregnant, I got this contract to come and sing an opera in Boston, and I accepted the contract. This is very good. I was like, okay, yes, I will sing this, and I liked the music. I liked the music very much, and this was ongoing, and then I between when I signed the contract, when I accepted the contract, so when I had my son, things kind of changed, and it seems like I couldn't leave my newborn to go perform opera. Now, if it was a man that just had a son, he would go, no question asked, right? He would just pack his things and say, okay, I know I just had a baby, but tell his wife or partner, hey, take care of this child, and I'm going to go make money. But I couldn't do it. So that is I know we try to be equal, but a woman and man, they're not equal at all. There is different layers to it, which I don't want to open up right now. But the things that a man can easily do, can easily just move from place to place, like as the career entails. You have to travel everywhere. You have to travel for auditions. You have to travel for coaching. Sometimes I remember I had to go to different states just to meet with a pianist, to coach with a pianist. Now that I have kids, I can't just pack and go. But a man, a tenor, can do that. A tenor can do that. A bass can do that. So that is the challenge. One of the challenges that I have been trying to navigate. Like, how do I do this as a mom or as an African woman, which, it seems like my place in society is to be nurturing, is to be a mother. Like when you hear Africa, when you hear African woman, you just think nurture, you just think, fruits of the womb, you just think children, you just think multiples, you just think, abundance. You don't think, somebody who is like spending a night here and there in different hotels to make a orchestral rehearsals or something. So you don't think that as an African woman. That's one of the challenges I'm trying to navigate again. Like, what is my place? Like, how do I continue to enjoy this art form while being an ideal African woman? What is an African prima donna? Who is an African prima donna? How can an African prima donna be a prima donna and still be an African? And still be an African woman? So, yeah. You can tell that I'm quite passionate about this because my voice kind of elevates when I'm talking about this.
Of course.
Yeah.
And it's very important. Then, okay, perhaps during this session, we'll talk about it. Now, as a professional classical music singer, as an opera and scholar, how do you then see yourself or your position? What's your mention in the male-dominated music? Can you just tell us a few things about your recent performance? I don't know if that's possible. How do you see yourself? Yeah.
Well, so I know I don't necessarily agree that it is male-dominated. I think it's just male empowered. It is more male empowered because there were lots of soprano singers in opera. It is, classical music. There are lots of women practitioners that are also playing instruments too. And of course, you know, there are lots of sopranos. So it's not, I don't think it's necessarily male dominated. I just think it is like male empowered. There's more power to the male. I remember as an undergrad, they would push scholarships to male singers than before they start considering the female singers. So like it's more male empowered. They other than scholarship, like I explained earlier on, a man can just pack up and go. A man can like hop from one bus to the other, or hop from one plane to the other to meet a rehearsal to perform here and there. So it's like men have more flexibility, and they're more empowered. So how do I situate myself? Where do I find myself? Honestly, it is something I am still navigating. It is something I am in the crux of. I am still trying to figure that out. I think what I am doing right now serves me at the stage of my life, because I'm a mom of really, really young children. So I have to be home. I have to be present. My presence in their lives is the most important thing that I would ever do in my lifetime, especially at this age. So, you know, being able to like then find a way to still keep practicing classical music, to still keep giving concerts, is what I'm trying to navigate. And it's something I'm doing quite successfully at right now. Because I was last year, even though I had two kids, I was still able to give a concert. Last year, even though I had two kids, I was still able to teach my lessons, you know. And so like it is still something I'm doing. But now in order to for me to travel, like to actually leave this the house and like not be at home for a few days at a time, it's something that I have not been able to manage. I did manage it when I had my first kid. I think I actually came to Nigeria without my baby, and I spent a week in Nigeria, and she was only just 5 months old. And throughout my journey, I was losing my mind. It was a really, really difficult journey. So like, can I do this repeatedly? No, I can't. It's not even good for my mental health. I can't do this repeatedly, like every rehearsal or every time I have a performance. So I have to either turn down some contracts or just work from where I am now. That is, you know, giving concerts, teaching, and seeing what is available to me at my approximately to where I live. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Then your performance, is there anyone you can show us your recent performance?
Oh, absolutely.
Recent
Yes.
performance?
Recent performance. I will show you. It's kind of recent. It's been a few years ago, but it's my favorite of the performances that I have in my archive. This is my favorite. It's not very recent, but it is I mean somewhat recent. It's within like the last 2 years. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Wow. Thanks so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you. Yes, let's go to the, I think, then the question is, to round all these things up, what is your advice to the classical music singers, particularly young African women in Nigeria and beyond? What would be your advice to them? How should they cope? What can, what is the way? What can they learn from your own part? How can, you motivate them? What's your advice to them?
So I'm going to start this by saying that the times we live in right now is different from the time when I was studying classical music. We live in some kind of like Gilded Age era. It's almost kind of like the Gilded Age era of the 1900s, where things are not real. Things are not really gold, but they're painted. They're gilded, painted gold. This is not really diamond. It's just polished stones. And people show this to prove that who they're not really. I'm not an aristocrat, but I have all this gold. But it's not really gold. It's not really diamonds. And I think that's what we've come back to that era where, we have social media and we're showing, we're pressured to show something that maybe we are, but most likely we're really not. We're just the pressure is so high to portray an illusion, like this illusion of like I have gold, but I don't really have gold. Where the social media is pushing us to be that way. And how does this relate to singing? Now you have singers that are just learning, and instead of them to like devote so much time and effort, because classical music is a really, really disciplined art form. It takes a lot of discipline to do it very, very well. Now we have young singers that instead of like taking time to own their craft, they're being pressured to show what they are doing. Sometimes they're showing things that they're not. And does this come out well? Most of the time, it doesn't. Sometimes it does. But most of the time, like you're just, again, painting wood and calling it gold. You're just polishing stones. You're not really going back on, sitting down on that piano and learning those notes and like getting it into your body. That's the discipline it takes to like perform a piece very, very well. You just have it's hours of like concentrated practice that we're not, this society, like the social media era is not allowing us to do, because we just want to see results. We want to see results. We want to post results. We want to see results. We want to post results. And then you have what ends up happening is that we have half-baked singers or half-baked performers that when they're then thrown into the thick of it, they have really nothing to show for it. When that gilding is gone, when that painted gold is washed away, then there's nothing underneath. So social media is not letting us sit down in the practice room and practice, because your practice doesn't look fancy. It doesn't look fun. It's not like real practice. It's not something you want to post. It's not the process of like yesterday I was singing a note over and over and over and over and over again. If I posted that on social media, that would have probably been a boring thing for somebody to watch, But that's the work it takes for me to be able to sing that line. I was just singing it over and over, and just that few bars, I just kept going over and over again. Social media doesn't let us do that. So my advice is do it. Practice. Go sit down. If you want to do this and you want to do it well, just go sit down and practice. Sit down on that piano, play those notes, and practice over and over and over again. Because when you do get there, it is solid. It is real gold. It is real diamond. It's not gilding. That's my advice. I know this sounds kind of cliche, and I feel kind of old saying it, but but it is the truth. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I miss you for a while. I don't know towards the end of your point, but thank you. Yeah. But that's not your, I'm sure that's technological issue, of course. But thank you so much. So I think, thank you. It's been an interesting journey so far. I've learned a lot of deep insight. And of course, our friends and colleagues online have been responding severally, different questions, different, response, and, showing emotion, following your fascinating stories, your professional advice, and also the performance also. Thank you so much, Dr. Holland. This is so beautiful. It's challenging. It's quite challenging. It's critical in the sense that, it's that moment where we reflect again on things that we take for granted. For instance, people hardly think, oh, women, people hardly think like that. So this, she has a baby at home. Then you want her to travel for rehearsal, and you tell her, oh, if you don't come, you won't get paid. We don't do this, you won't do this. So we take these things for granted. People take it for granted. People hardly think like that, And thanks so much for bringing us to that reality, to that reflexive moment again, showing it to us, in a more practical, in a more effective way. Thank you so much, Dr. Holland. So at this moment, again, for some of you joining us for the first time, this is our Ghana's concert and seminar series. I'm going to post again in the general chat for everyone. You can follow us on social media. You can follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook. You can follow us. This particular presentation is definitely going to be on our YouTube page. Please, I just sent the YouTube link to everyone via the chat platform there. Please click and subscribe, follow us, and engage us further. Also, the materials, we already have up to 26 or 27 videos there of important conversation as this, So, and the materials, again, they are not meant to be kept there. They are for all of us to go back to them, to reflect on them, and to advance the kind of conversation that those materials embodies for your research, for your article, for your project, for your documentary. I'm not saying you copy it and do it. No. Engage it further. Take ideas and produce things. Let them help us move beyond where we are. Yeah, that's what I mean. It is one of our ways of doing digital humanities. We call it digital archive, So archiving on the go, beyond the normal archive or put it in one box somewhere. No, that's not what we are doing. What we are doing is on the go, capturing the moment, capturing the real essence. No editing. Just take it there, have the conversation, put it there, and let scholars, public, and policymakers go there and engage it, Yeah, so thank you so much. So click that link and subscribe and follow our conversation. So now back to Dr. Holland. Thanks so much. Let's open to our friends and colleagues online. It's been an interesting moment. It's been a journey today, having you, open us to these multi-layers of ideas, of emotion, full of ideas, full of practicalities, things that are important, not only for music, but also for general understanding of who we are as human body, embodying so many things, So at this moment, friends, I am happy to invite you. If you have questions for Dr. Holland, or you want to put in a few things, please just say your name and ask your question, please. Let's do that quickly. Yeah. So, okay, we have the first one here, Dr. Peter Sevanos. Can we have you, Dr. Peter Sevanos? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Agatha. I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. Thank you, Dele, for hosting. So I have a very simple question. I actually had very many questions, but for want of time, I'll just leave it at this single question I've got here. And this has to do with the notion of femininity and opera singing. Your flyer says African prima donna, and the implications. You see, the word implications is key to the conversation today. So my question is, if it's a big if the future of Nigerian women as performers of Western or European classical opera is, I mean, if that future is feminine, are we already there? Do you think we're already there? Because now you are more or less performing from the diaspora. So within the Nigerian space, are we yet there? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Silvanus, for your question. I do not think we are there. I even think, even in the world at large, like even with singers, with prima donnas from the West, I don't think they're there either. It's just the nature, most importantly, the biological nature of women. You simply won't leave your primary responsibilities, which is like taking care of your young, to sing opera. Now, there are some people that are opting, so some singers are choosing one or the other, and maybe for them they are there. But for like the implications in my the research and the conversation we're having today tends to deal with like the average Nigerian, and like the average Nigerian woman wants a family, I think, wants a family and wants to, be fruitful and multiplying. And doing this, one has to give. Something has to give, right? You have to either do this or do that. You can't do both. So if that's your question, are we there? No. That's why the topic is called the implications. There are implications. There are consequences. There are, well, let me not say consequences. let me say sacrifices. There are sacrifices that have to be had. And if we want to be there, you either choose one or the other. And doing both, you can't do both in grand schemes. You cannot be like the world opera most sought after opera singer while still being a mom. I mean, at least you can do that without lots of support.
Yes, I'm just curious because this seems like a perennial problem. Do you think that we will ever get to the point where this work-life balance for women in opera would really shift so that you don't have this kind of challenge anymore? Do you really think that there's light down the tunnel? What exactly should people, stakeholders, be doing? Do you think this has to do with policies?
Yes.
What exactly do you think?
I think it has to do with policies a lot. So I was talking about the gig that I turned down in Boston. If I had provisions for my child while I'm on stage, I would take him and go and sing. If I had a baby, if there was somebody to watch my child while I was singing, if there was like a room where I can nurse him, if there was like stuff like that I can actually be able to like leave him somewhere while I'm singing on stage, I would do that. But it's not provided for opera singers, for female opera singers. I mean, it's not provided for male opera singers. It's not a thing that people do in opera singing. Now, work like when you're working as a professor, for instance, at a university, there is more and more universities are coming up with ways where women can actually cater for their young while still, teaching, and this work-life balance can be good. But at the moment, it's just not practical. So what stakeholders should be doing is providing this stuff is providing childcare, is providing having spaces where women can nursing moms can nurse, or where their really young kids can be taken care of by professional nannies or childcare providers, if you may. And I think we have a long way to go with that, because it is music, and I don't know that music is as important, or this kind of music is as important for people to invest in these terms and demands. So I don't know. I think we still have a long way to go. It would be good if we had it, but we still have a long way to go.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, well, it's kind of a diversion from maybe the topic, but still related to African opera. Well, to opera, in this sense, African opera. Is there anything like an African opera?
Yeah,
is it
absolutely.
performed?
Yes.
Can you share your idea of what exactly African opera is to you?
Okay, yes, of course. So like African opera is really just, well, I know I have sung a Nigerian opera before. It's really just Nigerian languages, Nigerian traditions, and just set to Western classical music art form, which is kind of like the same as like Nigerian art music or Nigerian African art music. So it's basically like just Nigerian culture, Nigerian languages, and Nigerian musical traditions that is being set in the style of like Western music tradition. Yeah, so that is the African opera that I have performed, and yes, it does exist, because I performed that last year. 2 years ago. It is very very interesting, but the thing that needs to happen with that is that we need to have a lot more of it, so that it's then recognized, so that opera houses around the world can then pick it up and then say, oh, this season we're performing Iriajo by Dr. Omojola, or something very, very operatic by some famous Nigerian composers. So yeah, African opera does exist. Nigerian opera, let me just say Nigerian opera. Nigerian opera does exist. I have performed them before. It has a place in the world. We just need a lot more of it, so that it can be standard repertoire.
So we can also come up with things like Igbo opera, Yoruba opera, Hausa opera, things like that.
Yes, very, very possible. Like the opera I was telling you about that I performed a few years ago was a Yoruba opera. It's called Iriajo, and it is very standard music. It's a very, very good opera. Yeah, and I'm sure some practitioners like in the West, in the eastern part of Nigeria, are taking composing operas. But it just needs to be standardized. It needs to be introduced to the world, so that like people can actually see it. So it needs to be printed. It needs to be documented. It needs to be put forth. Yeah.
in terms of standardization, what can African or Igbo opera, for example, does the same rules of the Western apply to these African operas, or do we have to come up with something like a particular form that that suits the African opera? Because we are traditional, our traditions and there's so many things that are not really easily fusing with that. Do we have to just simply mirror the African opera into the Western, or is there a need to maybe set out a clear set of rules about how to go about this particular opera?
Yes, like it needs to be taught. It needs to be taught. On like everything, it needs to be taught. Like for instance, I sing Italian operas. I was in school. I was taught Italian language. I was taught Italian IPAs. I was taught how to pronounce Italian words. So if you want to sing Igbo opera, for instance, you need to teach practitioners how to. They need to be schooled on how to do it. That is, if you want to make it. It depends on how you want to go about it. If you want to make it like real traditional Igbo opera with Igbo instruments and all that stuff, you need to teach it to the people that are performing it, or the people that are performing it needs to already know how to do it, in order for it to be come out in media. Because it's one thing for you to write it and think about it. It's another thing to execute it. So if for instance, if the white man cannot play the oja, or for instance, or cannot play a talking drum, there needs to be a system where it is being taught to them, so that the orchestra or whoever it is that's performing the music can learn it. Now, but what is currently available right now is the Nigerian art music, or Nigerian art opera, where Nigerian languages, like I said, is just a Nigerian tradition. It's just translated and put into Western art form. That is readily available, and that is ongoing. People are performing it right now. So they put the melodies of an oja in a violin part or in a flute part. And so Mr. Smith in Boston Opera can play it, can play it on his own instrument. He doesn't need to learn how to play the Igbo flute. So that is readily available, and that's ongoing.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question.
Okay, yeah, well, yes, to get us then. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harvin. Thank you, Dr. Holland. Thank you. Can we have Professor Adeyemi Okunade, please?
Well, again, I want to thank the organ house headed by Dr. Bayuguyemi. I want to thank our fantastic regular host or co-host, Dr. Oladele Ayorinde, for being consistent. God bless you all. Well, Dr. Holland, congratulations for this beautiful presentation, for the conversation, and for the way you have responded to the questions. I want to acknowledge you greatly, and I want to say that you are one of the few who have really gained recognition at that level. Why am I saying that? There are a lot of Africans who are breaking grounds in Western concept of music, though because of racism, they do not rise. And I'm sure you will understand better. And for colleagues also here, will understand better. A lot of composer, theorists, performers are here in the diaspora. But when we can even do it better than them, the issue of racism is still there. It's a global thing, everybody knows that. So each time I watch Agatha, I really feel delighted. And for the last speaker, let me say that there are Igbo composers of opera who have done so much. If you can access Ndubusi Okechukwu Ndubusi's work, The Vengeance of Lizard, Symbol of a Miracle, Mekis Nzewi's work, maybe Woman of Sabbath or so. That was what they performed recently in Nigeria. Sometime the nights of one of these nights of these churches at golf club in Port Harcourt asked them to perform that Nzewi's work. That is just by the way. So that is what I want to say about Dr. Holland. That is really making good wave, and we just say God bless you. Thank you for still being African, taking care of your mother, taking care of your, sorry, not your mother, still be an African mother, take care of the children. Can you please mute Mr. Alvin's mic? Mr. Alvin's mic, if you can mute your mic, thank you. Well, so thank you for still being an African mother who will not just jettison that because of the commercial gains. Now let me quickly go into my contribution. Dr. Ayorinde raised a question. Why do we specialize on this African stuff at master's level, at PhD? Why don't we do it right from undergraduate? Did I get that right, Dr. Ayorinde? Yes,
exactly. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I think this now this is one of the essences of this organ series seminars. Why must we wait to get to graduate level before we start talking about it? And it linked that to the issue of decolonization, which has been a subject for past years in Africa. Asia is moving faster in every area of decolonization, whether in the arts or with. I was in Malaysia for ISME conference some years ago, and I was surprised to see a 400-member orchestra, fusion of instruments, and you need to see the presence of Malaysian, Asian instruments heavily at that concert. Even in the addressing these days, you will see that the decolonization is going on very fast. In their style, the same thing. In their names, the same thing. So when you raise that issue of why don't we start it? And I think what we need to focus on is the issue of convention and identity. If you want to read music, once you see score, that's part of the convention. If you are talking of harmony, you know what Western harmony is. Well, you want to take that as part of the convention. You know the rules that was not followed. But do we talk of African harmony in the classroom? That is where it starts from. How many of our departments are teaching our indigenous instruments? These are the questions we have to start with before we can now start specializing on that. I want to also again make reference to University of Port Harcourt in Nigeria, because students study djembe drums from first year to final year, and they perform it as their major instrument. It's called music. Thank God for Becky Nzewi, who came out with one. They are using that book in South Africa, and I'm sure Dr. Ayorinde will also be aware, since he's also more familiar with that in South Africa. So the convention is theory of convention and identity. The convention is there. Let everybody know that. Do we have the identity there? That identity is the only thing that we need to focus on now. If you have the identity as part of our curriculum, multicultural curriculum, bicultural curriculum, yes, good. But where is our emphasis? Each time I look at Dr. Ayorunde's page, I see him carrying the mother drum of the Dudu family. When I see him with that, I smile and I say, well, maybe the colonization has started already. Because I will not see some of our professors here in the US or in Europe carrying that. It's either they stay on piano, they stay on violin, and that represents the identity. Immediately you see them. So for us here, we have to take some radical steps. And I don't want to sound extremist. When somebody is answering 2 foreign names as a Nigerian, that identity is not there. I used to, when I was still in Nigeria teaching, when my students answer 2 foreign names and they say, I am John Ennikins, I say, no, that's an act of criminality, because nobody can trace you. If you commit any crime and they say, oh, it's a Nigerian, this is that, where did it come from? But when you hear Ogenero, you know, it's an man. Oh, Chukudi. Whenever we hear Agatha, we could click. We are thinking of where to place how, but we know those who always answer that name. It's a Catholic name. We know it's from the East. So declaration, issue of declaration start from the person himself. Start from that person himself. That will now take me to this issue again. We have talked of why can we get to the level of the Western classical opera here? And my question is, why should we be there if you are talking about decolonization? Why must we, I'm saying must, we use that Western yardstick to say until we get to the Western classical opera? Don't forget that I'm happy our people are there. So what you are seeing that all the things they are doing there, we have quality number that can represent it, that I'm not American, I'm not European, but I can do your music the way you do it or modern. That is credit for all of us. But the primary thing is, okay, can I now also start talking of how do I sing the African art music? Since we have studied their music, we have, Agatha mentioned Oladele. You need to watch Oladele's in radio. It's a fantastic one. If you have watched Symbol of a Miracle by Unubusi, you'll be surprised. If you take the knowledge of art music we have studied to rebrand the Ayorinde theater that Dr. Ayorinde mentioned and bring it to the fore, you will see that it's fantastic. So I think part of our focus now is identity. It's not struggling. I want to be like the Western. No. I don't think that is to be our focus. Let's take the convention. We are good at the convention. Let's not talk of the identity now. I'm looking for someone who becomes fun. Look at Chimanda that Agatha also mentioned. And I will tell us at this forum today, almost all the Africans who have excelled in arts used their indigenous knowledge to get to the limelight. Let me quickly mention a few names so that I will not take too much of our time. Look at Chinua Achebe. Look at what things Fall Apart have done today. He was thinking indigenous, transitioning into the Western thing, and becomes exotic before them. Look at Wole Soyinka. Look at all his work. Look at Chimanda. So for us to really excel, for us to really, my mentor and teacher will say, look here, you cannot beat these people. When you beat them to it, they don't want to agree. So for you to do that, you need to really come out. But for us to come out again, because I don't want us to get it offline, I'm talking of convention identity. You must first make sure you are very vast in that, their own. So when you are discussing, you can really be equipped to discuss very well. Each time I always have discussed with my friend Ayorinde, we talk of creative musicology, creative musicology. Let me write my music from Bolojo with Bolojo rhythm, with Bolojo harmony. But I may not be able to explain what I'm doing if I'm not versed in the conventions. So I'm not saying it's an escape route for us, no. But the issue of identity, we must now sit down, having gained enough experience in Western music, which I call convention in this context. Let me now face mine and see what brought Akinyuba, African pianism, seeing him on talking drum, writing music for all these instruments. Owaje is doing that already. Olunoti is doing that already. Olusodi is doing all those things already. So I think our focus should not be, how can Western classical opera be more established in Africa, in Nigeria? It's how do you make the Westerners to come? They won't come and watch Western classical opera in Nigeria, in Africa. They have it enough there. How do we get them to come over? See what is happening in the social environment of Nigeria now. See the Westerners getting married to our people, to Igbo girls, Yoruba girls, all over there. See what they do. Well, I guess maybe I'm taking too much time. Once we see, I need this face on the screen, tell that we've got to round up. So that is my contribution and my emphasis on the convention identity, having it at first degree level before we continue, and making sure that we now promote our identity with accepted norms. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much. Of course, my face will represent many things. Thank you so much. I think yes, and thanks for taking us back to that particular question here, is still within the issues around indigeneity, identity discourse, and the biggest of it, representation, not only within Africa, but also within the global economic space, artistic space, and cultural landscape. Because arts are powerful, and opera, classical music, they are strategic tools. In fact, this is not even, as Professor explained, it's not new. Over the years, we've seen in the 50s, the Echezona, the Sam Akabots, they've done a lot in terms of local opera, making local opera, creating narrative, creating stories and staging them, So I believe, of course, we can push forth on that. Yeah, we have many hands here and we have other. So I think let me follow the order here. So we have Shijoke, one, Judith, then we have one, somebody just reached out to me since, which I've not been able to invite. Let me just quickly check. Yeah, Chiwendu, 3, then we'll go to DBO. So let's do it quickly like that. So we have Chijoke, Judith, yeah, we have Judith, Chiwendu, and DBO. So let's have Chijoke, please.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I hope I'm audible enough.
Definitely, yeah, you're audible.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Agatha, for your presentation on the opera. Thank you for the questions you answered so far. Mine is a form of question and contribution. I don't know if you have, tried to do some kind of ethnographic work in terms of going back to the local or indigenous traditions of musical and theater performances to look out for things that can help us indigenize the opera tradition more in the 21st century. I don't know if you've done that and if you would think of doing that. And secondly, as a form of contribution, I am trying to inform everyone around that a lot has been going on at the University of Nigeria and Nsukka in terms of the evolution and development of the African opera tradition since the days of Meki Zewi in the 1970s up to 80s, 90s. I mean, since even we are more like in the second or third generation, if I can say so. But the problem there is that there is not a lot of synergy between people. Let me say people in Lagos and people in Nsukka. And when I say people in Lagos, I mean people who as a zone of people performing theater, musical theater in the Southwest, and Nsukka as a zone of people performing the same in the Southeast. So if there had been a sort of synergy, I've tried to to talk about this with Joe Opera Manuke. And he acknowledged what I was saying. He was surprised when I was telling him, certain things that have been developed by the students of that department. But the lack of synergy is also a problem. I think there should be, and I believe Agatha should also encourage this. People who practice opera, I mean, both those in the diaspora and those in Lagos should sometimes, try to take a look at what is going on at Nsukka, because a lot has been, developed over time, but because it's not getting publicity, it's not getting sort of an attention. Many people do not, really know about it. So because they do this daily in terms of performance workshops, from one semester to another, they keep on developing things, improving, but those things just, go or rather end up as scores, just scores after performances, and people do not know them because maybe the environment does not really give them the leverage to show off what they've been doing. So I'm encouraging more cooperation and more synergy, and it would definitely improve the national outlook on what opera should be for us as Africans or for us as Nigerians. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chijioke. Oh, sorry, Dr. Agatha, just a quick one before you take over the process and response to Mr. Chijioke's comment, if you have any. So, Mr. Chijioke, I'm happy that you are here today and you are saying this thing to us live. So also, I'm throwing it back to you. When will you be available to come and tell us about this project on this platform? We don't know. I'm just hearing this from you. Of course, I know I have colleagues who have studied at Nsukka. I know about the Nsukka's opera class, the African chorus, Western chorus, but we don't know the details. So the question is, when will you be available? I don't know if you're a professor or lecturer at Nsukka, I don't know. But who can you invite? Can they come and tell us about this thing and tell us, show us what it is? Then that is one way of making it happen, known to us. We don't know. I, for instance, don't know. I'll be glad to host somebody who will come here and detail the process, even the history of that ideas and what the available works. That's
okay.
Yes, I'll be glad to have you or somebody who will come and do that.
Okay, no problem. In my own, little capacity, I began, my PhD in this area, and even though I'm yet to complete it, but I was able to, kind of sort of, develop some kind of knowledge or some kind of data following my research. But I would nominate people who are my teachers or people who taught me, who would, maybe do better job than me. I would think I would nominate somebody like Professor Nyeji. I believe he would definitely accept to come and give us, the details you're talking about if you try to, consult with him or invite him. Yeah, in my own little capacity, I mean, there are a few things that I've been able to, write. I could maybe share them. I mean, in no distant time. I'm believing I'm supposed to get them ready, at least to keep the information out there on how the historical process has been before now.
Okay, just a quick one. I know Dr. Agatha wants to respond to this. Now, one other thing that this platform stands for is, of course, I know Professor Onyeji, my regards to him, I know him very well. Definitely, we would like to have Professor Onyeji on this platform, but not, I am throwing this challenge to you. This platform is a free space for anybody. We don't really believe in hierarchy in that sense that somebody is the only equipped person to come and say something. Look, if we have a fourth-year student who can tell us the history of opera in Nigeria, we are open to that person to come and dish it out. So this place, we don't believe in hierarchy. We believe in the content, and we give value to everyone who has the content at the equal level. If you are coming from a professor and somebody from Ajegunle or Mbaise or Umaya, we see you at the same thing. We don't have hierarchy. In fact, that is the very thing we are trying to address in the Nigerian and African context. It is part of the decolonial process.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. So I'm going to drop you the email. You can reach out to me, please. You can reach out to us via this email. The organ out, this email. Please reach out. Please get in touch and let's plan the presentation how you like to do it. Yeah, please get in touch. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Holland, I'm sure you want to say something. You want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, everything that I want to say is already been said. Like, Mr. Chidioke's work is like phenomenal. I have personally sung programmed some of his compositions, his art song compositions in my recitals, and they received the highest applause. And so yes, to answer your first question, I am interested. I am always interested to finding more and more repertoire, or especially opera repertoire, because that is missing, that is lacking. We have a lot of like art song repertoires and that is out there, but opera repertoires, like, I am open. And part of my research right now, as a voice teacher, is teaching my students Nigerian art songs, Nigerian opera arias. So I am interested in finding some of those arias and operas to further, perform them personally and teach my students. Yes, I am very interested. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chidioke, kindly get in touch and let's work this together. Definitely, we'll bring Professor Onyeji to come and do a presentation. But we want you, or anyone. So anyone can do it. Yeah, knowledge has nothing to do with hierarchy. Anybody can dish it out and fulfill that need for us. Thank you. Yeah. Can we have Judith? Can we have you, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Agatha, hello, it's Dr. Judith. Thank you for your lessons. Thank you for the ideas you're giving us. And thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for your contribution towards motherhood and the performance. It's something a lot of directors take for granted. I belong to a lot of group here in Abuja that if they give you their timetable and you're unable to work with it, they would ask you to leave. And it's because you can't just, trade your family for a passion. Motherhood has really taken a lot from singing women like us. But I'm happy that you're able to, get through both important things in your life. Some of us here, it's not just been easy, because I can remember my first pregnancy. I think I had a performance when I was 9 months pregnant, and people kept commenting on, her gown does not fit. Why is her tummy this big? It was so depressing. They were not even concerned about the performance. They didn't complain if the notes were flat or something, but they were really complaining about the way I was looking because of my tummy. It could be depressing for young mothers at that age. And even when you put to birth and you have concerts, like I attended a Christmas concert when my son was barely less than 1 month old. And while you're on stage singing, you're hearing your child crying because he needs to be breastfed. At that time, your attention is divided. So all these kind of things are things that we were not taught in school. We're not taught how to manage emotions. It's not part of what they teach us in school. It's not just enough to tell students, okay, you're a voice major, you take us through our repertoires. You don't tell us about those emotional things that come with singing and how to navigate, it with your family life. It's very important that they include such in school. And like Chidioke rightly mentioned, University of Nigeria Nsukka has one of the best programs for operas, both Western and African opera. I graduated from that place, so I know about it. But the fact that people don't know about it is because there is no stage for performances to be presented. There's no stage, or there are, and there's still no avenue for students to exhibit that operatic, African operatic nature they have. In Lagos, they have the audience. In Nsukka, they don't. I mean, for you to stage an opera and invite people, you run at a loss because there's nobody to come and watch. Dr. Peter Silvanus is here. He will bear us witness to everything we're saying. But if there is an organized body that once in a while invite the students to come to Muson, for instance, to present or perform any opera of their choice, you'll see that it will speak volume. People will get to know about it. And also, thank God we have a lot of professors here. Is there any way they can inculcate ITs in our music curriculum? Allow students to go and, maybe have 6 months or 4 months or less months of whatever they are practicing in an organized form. Like someone studying about editing and videography and something should be allowed to go to a firm, an organization that are really built in such way so that they will see what they are supposed to do. Most universities don't have this equipment. Now, how will the students be able to carry on with whatever they are doing after graduation? My PhD thesis was the life of performance after graduation. The few ones I was able to interview dropped their musical career after graduation. They all went to the classroom because there was no avenue for them to carry on with their arts. There was no organized avenue. They get gigs, yes, but how much does the gig pay? So they all went to classroom as teachers. So these avenues will need to be opened. Let there be IT program for students. It could be in 3rd year, it could be in final year, but they need to go and see what the world have in stock for them before they go out to the world. And lastly, to Dr. Agatha, do you have this, do you by any means intend coming back to Nigeria to teach? Because as it stands now, I can be corrected. There is no university in Nigeria that's offering voice on the on PhD level, master's or PhD. Unipods, I think, might offer theirs in master's level, but in doctorates, in PhD, I don't think there is any university here in Nigeria that somebody will go and study voice. And that's the limitations we have. So it's not just about studying voice in your 1st degree. What about the other degrees? And those we have that have studied it up to the PhD level, like Dr. Agatha, has refused to come to Nigeria to teach us. And now you watch our videos online and you complain and you nag. How do you want us to learn? So I don't know. Why don't you come back to Nigeria and see how you can make things happen for us? Thank you.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Before Dr. Agatha, just a point. You spoke about people not coming to Lagos, people not coming to Lagos, people are the works are the first thing, like I invite Mr. Chijoke. Look, one thing about visibility, publicity in life, in the heart, let's put it in the heart alone, is that things that people don't talk about, people don't know about it. Hence, I've invited him to come on this platform or other platform. So people, first of all, needs to know. When they know, when you talk about it, they know. When they know, they see the value, then it will automatically register in their consciousness. So they'll be okay. So this guy, so there are people writing opera in Nsukka. Can we invite them to come and do? It's not about Muson alone. Yeah, there are other important places that opera can be staged in Enugu, in Owerri, in Umuahia, everywhere, even in the East alone, there's a lot. But the question is, if we don't talk about these materials, people who have the idea will not know about it, how to help you. It's about packaging, it's about showcasing, it's about exhibition. Exhibitions are not often taught as part of the content. So you need people who can put that in a way and sell it to the world. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but let me hand over to Dr. Holland for that.
Dr. Judith, you really got me by the hand and you're not letting me go. You're really, really squeezing my hands here. First of all, when I watch the videos, I'm sorry I nag. I try not to nag and I don't nag anymore. I know for a fact and I accept for the fact that in the past I have nagged, and so I'm sorry about that, and I'm not gonna nag anymore. I'm actually gonna encourage. I'm trying to encourage singers. As for going back to Nigeria, Oh my goodness, even Dr. Ayo is laughing. It is, I'm just going to be straightforward. No, I don't have plans to go back to Nigeria and teach, because you know how Nigeria is right now. I don't think you're honestly seeing anybody that is volunteering themselves to go back to Nigeria to teach something like in my discipline, like voice. First of all, is there a place to teach voice in Nigeria? A university is funding voice in this capacity. Is there an avenue for Nigerians that have gotten high degrees in voice to come back? Is there a place to do that? You know, it's not available. So, I mean, I know it is very patriotic to say, come back home, we need you here. But there has to be something for the Nigerians to leave what they have going on here in the States to go back home. They have to be students to teach. There have to be resources to teach these students. And if there isn't, it is discouraging, and it's actually counterproductive, because then it's just wasted. You know, they're not getting it in the West. They're not getting it in Nigeria either. So it's wasted. So it all comes down to, like, you know, improving the infrastructure of like teaching music, not even just voice, music generally in Nigeria. And then you see people coming back home. And so that's my response to that. I hope it is